I remember the silence. It wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was the kind of silence that feels heavy, like the world is holding its breath. I was standing on the porch of my half-built cabin, looking at the sky. It was late September. The air was still warm, but it smelled different. It smelled sharp, like cold metal. I'd spent the whole summer here in this remote valley. Just me, my tools, and the trees. My friends from town thought I was crazy. A cabin that size for one man? They'd say, why the double-pane windows? The extra insulation in the walls, the reinforced roof. They'd laugh. They called it the bunker, the fortress. They said I was overbuilding, wasting time and money on problems that didn't exist. I never argued. I just kept working. But that day, the silence was wrong. I'd lived in these mountains long enough to listen to them, and they were whispering something new. I looked at the pine trees. Their branches were still. Not a single bird called, and the light, the afternoon light, had a strange yellow-gray tint to it. It wasn't a sunset color. It was sickly. I felt it in my bones before I knew it in my mind. A deep, slow drop in pressure. My ears popped. A storm was coming, but not a normal autumn storm. I walked inside to the main room. It was just a shell, then. All studs and plywood subfloor. My friend Mark was there helping me frame a wall. He saw my face. The weather, I said, my voice quiet. It's returning. He walked to the open doorway and looked out, shrugged. The sky looks a bit odd. Probably just a thunderhead rolling in. We'll get some rain tonight. Good for the dust. It's not rain. I didn't know how to explain it. It feels lower, colder. Mark laughed. It was a kind laugh, but it had that edge to it. The one I'd heard all summer. You and your feelings. Man, you've been out here alone too long. It's September. It's supposed to get colder. He was right. It was. It's September, but my gut was a knot. I think we should change the plan, I said, looking at the wall. We were building. Forget the interior partition today. Let's get the last of the roof sheathing sealed, and the storm shutters on the windows, the ones I built. Mark put his hammer down. The shutters? Come on. Those are for a hurricane, not a full shower. We're 2 days from finishing this wall. If we stop now, we lose the whole day. I looked from him to the gray-yellow sky, and back to the warm, inviting plan of finishing a simple interior wall. The logical, normal thing to do. The thing everyone expected. My decision felt like a physical weight. We're losing the day anyway. We're putting the sheathing. We're putting the sheathing. On in the shutters. I moved before he could protest. I started gathering the sheets of plywood. From the pile, the action was quiet, final. I could feel his disbelief filling the space between us. He didn't help at first. He just watched me shaking his head. You're really doing this? Because of a gut feeling? Yes, I said, not stopping. But Mark was a good friend. Even if he thought I was losing it, he wouldn't leave me to do it alone. Grumbling, he picked up the other end of the plywood sheet. We worked in a tense silence. The normal sounds of construction, the banter, the jokes were gone, replaced by the thud of plywood, the shriek of the drill driving screws, the slap of the heavy timber shutters against the cabin's frame. Each closed shutter made the inside darker, more closed in. It felt like I was sealing myself in a box, a very strong, very carefully built box that everyone thought was ridiculous. As we fastened the last shutter, the first wind hit. It wasn't a gust. It was a single hard punch against the side of the cabin. The whole structure groaned, a sound I'd never heard it make before. Mark and I froze, looking at each other in the dim light. Then the sound came, a low, moaning roar through the valley. It didn't sound like wind. It sounded like something alive and very, very cold. Mark's eyes were wide. All the skepticism was gone, washed away by that one sound. "What is that?" I didn't answer. I walked to a small gap where a shutter hadn't fully sealed.
I peered out. The world had disappeared. The yellow-gray light was gone, swallowed by a swirling,
Blinding white. The trees were just dark, shuddering ghosts in the fury. It wasn't rain. It was snow. Horizontal, screaming snow. The first early winter storm had arrived. And it wasn't just early. It was violent. I turned to Mark. His face was pale. He was thinking what I was thinking. The road out. A winding gravel mountain track. It would be gone now. Invisible. We were trapped. He looked around the dark, sealed shell of the cabin. At the thick walls, the secured roof, the shuttered windows. His expression changed. The frustration, the mockery. It melted into something else, something like dawning, cold understanding. The overbuilt cabin. The paranoid. Preparations. The wasted time. My gut feeling. The silence between us now was different. It was the silence after a warning has come true. I spoke. My voice barely above a whisper, but it filled the dark space. "Your truck is at the bottom of the hill," I said. "You're not driving home tonight." He just nodded, staring at the wall where we were supposed to be building. The interior wall. The one that would have given us a cozy room, but done nothing to stop the storm. Trying to tear the roof off. Outside, the moan rose to a scream. I knew at that moment, if I had listened to him, to everyone, we'd be in a wooden shell, watching the windows shake. Feeling the cold pour in, praying the roof would hold. We weren't safe yet, not even close, but we had a fighting chance. And that was the only thing that mattered. The first night was the longest. Mark and I sat on the plywood floor, wrapped in our work coats. The cabin was a drum. The wind beat against it, a constant, roaring pressure. The shutters rattled in their frames, but they held. Every few hours, a heavier gust would hit, and the whole structure would tense. A deep wooden groan that made you stop breathing until it passed. We had a small camping stove. We melted snow for water. We ate cold beans from a can. We didn't talk much. What was there to say? The proof was in the storm screaming outside. My overbuilt walls were the only thing between us and a white, frozen death. Mark finally spoke, his voice hollowed with exhaustion. "How did you know?" I looked at the dark shape of the wood stove I'd installed just the week before. It was just a cast iron box in the corner waiting. "I didn't know," I said. "I just calculated." I read the old Forestry Service reports for this valley. I saw the patterns once every 30 or 40 years. The weather doesn't follow the rules. It jumps the tracks. So you built for the one in 40. Year storm? Yes. And he was quiet for a long time.
Everyone thought you were just being difficult.
No, the storm didn't leave in a day. It settled in. For 3 days, the world was just white. Noise and howling wind. The snow piled up deeper than I'd ever seen it here. This was the invisible.
Work, not the building, the surviving. We got the wood stove going, the double pane windows behind.
Their shutters kept the heat in. The extra insulation in the walls meant the fire's warmth stayed. Right here, with us, instead of bleeding out into the freezing void. We melted snow for hours to get drinking water. We rationed our food. The silence between Mark and me wasn't tense anymore. It was the quiet of shared focus, of two men realizing how thin the margin between comfort and catastrophe really is. Have you ever worked in silence while everyone doubted you? I have. All summer. Soaring, hammering, insulating. While people joked, that silence came back to me in those storm-bound days. It wasn't lonely anymore. It was solid. It was in every nail that didn't pull loose, and in every window that didn't crack from the cold. On the fourth morning, the wind stopped. The sudden quiet was louder than the storm. It was deafening. Mark and I looked at each other. We didn't celebrate. We just listened. Carefully, I unlatched one of the heavy storm shutters and pushed it open. A wall of snow, pure and blinding white, filled the opening. It was up to the roof. Eaves, and we were buried. That was the extreme test. We had to dig ourselves out. Not just a path to the door, a chimney up through 6 feet of dense, packed snow to the surface. The air inside would get stale. The temperature would start to drop again, fast. Once the stove ran out of wood we couldn't reach. We took turns, one of us digging with a makeshift shovel, a piece of plywood in the narrow, suffocating tunnel. The other resting, breathing hard in the dim cabin. The work was slow, brutal. Your muscles burned. Your lungs ached in the cold, thin air. I was digging. My hands were numb inside my gloves. My back was a single knot of pain. The tunnel was dark, closing in around me. I could only see the white wall in front of my face. I almost gave up. Almost. I thought of the alternative. Waiting for a rescue that might not come for weeks, running out of air. The slow, cold end in my own overbuilt tomb. I swung the plywood into the snow again and again. Then on one swing, there was no resistance. The plywood shot forward into empty space. A cascade of loose snow fell, and a shaft of blinding. Beautiful, gray-white daylight poured down the tunnel. I gasped. I scrambled forward, pushing my head and shoulders out into the open world. The silence was absolute. The valley was a smooth, unbroken sea of white. The trees were giant, frosted sculptures. The sky was still heavy, but it was calm. The storm was over. We had made it. We dug out the door. We assessed the damage, or rather, the lack of it. The roof, reinforced with the extra braces I'd insisted on, was intact under 3 feet of snow. No sag, no groan. The shingles were all there. The walls were straight and true. The windows, behind their scarred shutters, were uncracked. Mark's truck was a smooth, white mound at the bottom of the hill. It would be there until spring. A week later, a snowcat from the county, checking on remote properties, broke a trail up to my land. The driver, a grizzled man named Carl, stepped out and stared at the cabin. He looked at the cleared path, the smoke from the chimney, the solid structure. He looked at me. Heard this place was still under construction. It is, I said. Doesn't look like it had a hard winter. It did, I said. He nodded slowly, a look of deep respect in his eyes. He'd seen the other places, the collapsed porches, the broken windows, the summer cabins that weren't built for the test. He didn't say overbuilt, he just said, good job. When Mark finally got a ride out with Carl, he shook my hand. No words, just a firm grip and a nod. The lesson was learned, not with a speech, but with a storm. The cabins saved me, but it wasn't magic. It was the result of 1,000 small, quiet decisions everyone else thought were wrong. It was the choice to listen to the old data instead of the current laughter. To build for the worst day. Not the best one. What looks like madness to many can be exactly what works when the context changes.
And those who observe, prepare, and act quietly are usually ready when everyone else is not.
I'm still here. The cabin is warm. The winter, the real winter, has settled in for good now. And I'm not afraid of the silence anymore. I look out at the peaceful, frozen valley. A different kind of quiet, so I'll ask you. What would you have done in my place? Would you have built the interior wall? Or would you have listened to that quiet, persistent feeling? And where are you watching from today? Somewhere warm, I hope.